good to go from my end, like always, and then we will get started. Let's double check. Not sure if we're live here. Test one more time. Let's double check. Okay. Sorry guys, just making sure everything is tweeted out here. 1 second. Apologize for being late. Okay, yeah, I'll probably have to cut that 2 minutes of like dead silence. But all right, thank you guys for checking back into X's on the Board. We are back. I think it's our 7th episode so far. I know I was gone for a few weeks. I've been focusing more on get some of my content out. I know we're on Thursdays recently. That's looking like the way it's going to go based on my schedule. And I know there's also some stuff running on the other channel on Wednesdays. So this might be the day that we end up settling for going forward, get closer to Saturday, get closer to a lot of those college basketball games. So as you guys see on the side, this is what we're going to talk about today. Not a huge slate today. We're not going to talk Maryland basketball today. I actually do want to wait till next week because I want to kind of talk about Maryland more at large. I know within these episodes, and again, within the show live here in College Park, I didn't want these to run over 30 minutes, and I felt like it did last week, so I just want to condense it a little bit just to make sure that I'm talking about everything that I want to talk about. So let's get right into it. So we're going to start with In or Out College Basketball Edition. Last week, I talked about pretenders and contenders within being able to make the Final Four, and not whether you were a good basketball team or not, but how confident was I in you to be in the Final Four in Indianapolis, and potentially be in the national championship. We went through some teams. I'm trying to mix it up here. I'm not going to go with a bunch of obvious top teams that are ranked in the top 10 of KenPom. There are going to be some, but there's going to be some mix of contenders. They'll be all top 25 teams for the most part. But again, I just want to give an idea of like what I'm seeing from these teams as these games are going on. So I want to start with a game that's going to happen tonight between two teams that I think has huge implications on the Big Ten and what's going to happen in the Big Ten tournament. You could argue as of right now, in terms of Big Ten title contenders, it's Purdue, it's Michigan State, it's Illinois, it's Nebraska, and it's obviously Michigan. Those are the 5 teams where you could genuinely see them winning the Big Ten. I want to start with Michigan State. Now, all Tom Izzo Michigan State teams, if you're familiar with college basketball, you know that Michigan State teams are rarely bad on defense. They are usually in the top to 15 in defensive efficiency this year. They are ranked number 6, so you are not going to get easy shots against them. Another thing they do very, very well is they rebound the ball. They're top 5 in offensive rebound percentage. That means when they get a shot up, they are going after their own shot, and they're not giving you a chance to end this possession. We're going to get multiple possessions. And then on the other end, they're ranked number 1 in the country in not letting teams get their offensive rebound. Meaning, when you take a shot against Michigan State, the possession's over. There's no second chances. And I think that's going to be very interesting tonight against Purdue, who is a slower style team. In a lot of cases, Michigan State is good at speeding certain teams up. So now in this case, where Purdue is very methodical, they're not going to turn the ball over with Braden Smith. They do have size with Trey Kaufman-Renn at the 4, and then these other guys there with their size. So it's going to be interesting to see if Michigan State's defense, in most cases, it fuels them out in transition. It fuels them on the break to where Jeremy Fears can get to his spot. So again, if they're not forcing if they're not forcing turnovers here against Purdue, it'd be interesting to see how this, I guess, translates for their offense, because I think that is one of their concerns for a national title contender to be ranked just above the top 50 in offensive efficiency. I don't think is great for a team that you expect to be in the Final Four. I think that is a problem. With Jeremy Fears, again, he is somebody who is going to create shots for others. They're second in assists over field goals made, which means how often are your baskets assisted? Of your total baskets, how many are assisted? And then number 2 is a huge credit to Jeremy Fears. Again, he is able to create for other guys and get them quality looks. But again, I'm just looking at their schedule here. They have some questionable losses. I think the Wisconsin loss by 20 is very questionable. Them losing to Minnesota is questionable. Again, I don't like to judge wins or losses before January. I'm just not someone who thinks that. I think once conference play starts in January, that really defines who you are. But again, some of those losses, like I just can't see them in a Sweet 16 game against a pretty high 4 or 5 seed. Like I could see them losing. And again, at this point, I don't even know like they might be a 4 or 5 seed based on how things are going. So again, Michigan State, I'm out. I'm out on Michigan State. Just don't see it. So let's go to the team that they're facing tonight, and that's Purdue. Again, I'm somebody who came into the year, and I'm looking at Braden Smith as the best point guard in the country on every notable newspaper or ESPN number 1 point guard in the country. And I'm like, I've seen Braden Smith be consistently one of the most steady point guards in the country for a few years. But again, I don't know. For me, I don't think that's necessarily translated into huge postseason March Madness success. Now, this year, again, for most title contenders, if you are not top 30 in offense or defense, you're most likely not going to be in the Final Four, or you're most likely not a real threat to win the national championship. Again, I'm not saying you have to be top 10 in both cases. A lot of the national champions are. But to be in the Final Four, again, I think you need to be top 30 in offense and defense. And if you go back to history of a lot of the past champions, they've qualified for that. Again, Purdue, second in offensive efficiency. That's Braden Smith. That's Trey Kaufman-Renn. That's Fletcher Loyer. It's the continuity that they have. I think out of most of the top teams in the country, Purdue is one of the teams that are most familiar with everyone. Again, Braden knows where all of his players are going to be on the court at all times. They're not going to have any moments in the NCAA tournament where they're not on the same page because of lack of chemistry. That's not the issue at all. Again, they rarely turn the ball over. More Braden Smith. They are a very good offensive rebounding team. Again, very similar to Michigan State. So I'm very interested to see who wins the rebounding battle here, because again, Purdue is usually a team that they are usually going to bully the opposition unless you're going against a Michigan or one of these teams that are exceptional on the defensive end. I don't know why there's a glare coming there, but we can keep going. Again, they're also top 5 in assists over field goals made. Like I said, can you generate offense through your passes and assists? Again, that usually tells me, if you're very low in that metric, that usually tells me not a lot of ball movement, there's a lot of dribbling. And again, some people can argue, yes, when you get in the NCAA tournament and defenses have a bigger scouting report on you, you have to have guys who can create non-assisted baskets. So you could use that as a potential negative. But again, the fact that I've seen Braden Smith for years and years run one of the top offenses in the country does not give me any reason to be concerned here. The only thing that I think is concerning with Purdue is, again, when Fletcher Loyer's not shooting well, I don't know if they pose the threat from the three-point line to really scare certain teams. I think that in certain cases when Purdue is really supposed to blow teams out, and they have in certain instances, but again, that I feel like, again, not being able to shoot the three And it's not that they can't, but again, I think their volume is something that, like, when you're playing a team in the NCAA tournament, one of those mid-majors, who are going to shoot 45 threes, and one of their kids who's a graduate student sophomore hits 8 threes, are you going to have a guy that's going to be able to keep up with this slow, methodical pace that Purdue has? That might be the one thing that I worry about, but I don't think that's something that's really going to be a problem until, at minimum, the Sweet 16. So I'm in on Purdue. I think they can make the Final Four. I think offensively they can score with any team in the country. They've got 2 of the best players in the country. So Purdue's right there. Now let's move on to a team that is one of the top teams in the country, and there's been some talk about them after their game against Duke on Saturday. And I feel like a lot of people were very concerned with, I guess, how Michigan looked in the closing stretch of games. Now, I have mentioned this before. Again, my thought process on Elliot Cadeau is very volatile. It's sometimes I am too anti Elliot Cadeau and say you can't win with him. At North Carolina, he showed, like, again, he's the streaky shooter, doesn't really get to the rim that well, he's not a great finisher, doesn't have great size on defense. You can kind of attack him there. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, he runs a very efficient offense when he has good players around him. He gets guys into their spots. He's still very good at getting into the lane, which is a skill in itself. But again, in that Duke game, like, it felt like in certain possessions, they needed Elliott to get guys in their spots or just say, okay, I'm going to create something for myself. And for most of that game, he could not buy a basket. You could look at the stats. For most of that game, he couldn't buy a basket. And again, for as good as Michigan is, again, they are a top 5 offense, top 2 defense. They are second in the country in 2-point percentage because they are huge. They don't miss shots around the rim. They are number 3 in 2-point percentage defense, which means they don't let you score around the rim. You don't score 2-pointers on Michigan because of their size with, again, Morris Johnson and Yaxel Lendeborg and Ademora. We get it. But again, one of the things that I've seen people say, and this is not a very original take, but when Ademora, one of their bigs, getting fouled, they don't have a backup center. So that essentially means they're running Yaxel and these guys against bigger teams. And again, I think that maybe throws them off offensively. I don't think it's a huge deal. Again, their volume from 3 is not great, but again, their size and they're so efficient offensively, they get good shots. So again, I'm not really worried about that at this point. They don't have really any alarming losses at all. They've had some close wins, but that was like mainly earlier in the season. Like Michigan, the reason I give them credit is they don't shoot a bunch of threes, but they blow teams out. Usually, that's not a A and B combination there. Usually, teams that struggle to not really hit threes, it's tougher to blow teams out. So again, they've got Illinois, they've got Michigan State left. 2 tough opponents. I guess this will tell us a lot. Illinois is, again, one of the top offensive teams in the country. So we'll see how that works here. Michigan State's on the opposite end of the spectrum, where they're one of the best defensive teams in the country. I'm in on Michigan. If I had to put a stamp for my national championship winner as of right now, it would be Michigan. But the concern here is the lack of scoring from Elliot Cadeau at certain times, where the guard play is going to matter. They're going to rely on Trey McKinney a bit more when you're going against a lot of these dynamic freshman guards. And then when their bigs get in foul trouble, what happens? Those are my 2 concerns for them. Now, this is my next team. Again, this is one of the more polarizing teams in the country, I think, because of their freshman guard play. And I didn't want to come up here and do all teams with dynamic freshmen and bring you Kansas and BYU because people talk about them all the time. Now, this is one team, as of right now, they're ranked 17 in KenPom. They're 21-7 on the season. Arkansas Razorbacks. Obviously, the big talk is Darius Acuff. Like, his impact on this team, where they are number 1 in turnover percentage, which means they have the lowest turnover percentage in the league. They do not turn the ball over. That is indicative of your point guard, who has the ball, Darius Acuff, for 90% of Arkansas possessions. They are 4th in the country in offensive efficiency. Again, their offense runs. It runs smoothly, right? Again, compared to a Michigan State or Purdue, though, their assists over field goals made, meaning, do you create baskets through assists or do you create baskets through self-creation? Arkansas is pretty middle of the pack in that, and in that sense. Meaning they do have guards who like to take it off the bounce. Darius Acuff, Malik Thomas, DJ Wagner occasionally, Billy Richmond. So again, I'm not saying that's a huge negative because in the tournament, I think that gives them an advantage because when some of their offensive sets break down, you need that guy that's just going to be able to create something out of nothing. And they have a few guys who can do that. The things I worry about with them, they don't really rebound the ball well, especially as an offensive rebounding team. They're not the biggest team by any means. So, again, I wonder if – I don't know. I wonder about the rebounding when they go against bigger teams. They play a really fast pace, really fast, and I think that works at times when you get to the NCAA tournament and you've got all these media timeouts and the game is slower. You got to be able to execute. And I trust Darius to execute, but I don't know how much I trust the other guys in half-court situations to, I guess, generate offense against a lot tougher defenses. Like Kentucky, or not Kentucky, still thinking of John Calipari at Kentucky. They played a tough schedule, but again, they do have some concerning losses, like losing by 20 to Auburn is not great. Losing to Georgia in general, not great. Again, the Alabama loss was very close. Could have went either way. Darius was insane in that game. But, again, you don't love those losses. As of right now, I probably see them as a, I don't know, 4 seed maybe, 5 seed at this point. I think they're pretty dangerous as a 4 or 5 seed. But if they're a 3 or so seed, again, I think they are capable to an upset. This is probably the toughest one I've done. I'm out on Arkansas. I just think if they match up against a Purdue in Arizona, a team with size and can match them offensively in their pace, I don't really know how well that's going to fare for them. Again, I could see them making it to the Sweet 16, but as terms of the Final Four contender, I'm out on them. So this is the last team I want to talk about. And this is one of the more interesting teams in the country because if you talk to, I don't know, if you talk to 100 people on the street, random people on the street, and you ask them, do you know who St. Mary's, or do you know where St. Mary's College is? 90% of people will not be able to tell you, or they'll tell you the wrong school. St. Mary's in California. This is the team that, again, they are considered, I don't know if they're Gonzaga's biggest rival, but every year, like in their conference, which, again, the West Coast Conference, again, never really gets much love at all from KenPom and a lot of outside media. That's why Gonzaga is never really viewed as a credible threat. But St. Mary's, again, I fell into the St. Mary's love last year. I had a lot of people telling me about them. I was like, well, they play one of the slowest paces in the country. What's going to happen when teams speed them up? They're not the greatest three-point shooting team. This was last year I was talking about them. They don't really have a true dynamic guy. Like, I'm not really believing it until last year where they opened their eyes to a lot of teams with how they played. And again, it's much of the same thing here. Like, St. Mary's is 317th in average possession length. They are played very slow. They take up most of the shot clock. However, they're top 50 in offense and defense. Shows they're great on both sides of the ball. They also shoot the three well. Again, for a team that's usually pretty big in terms of size, they usually have a good amount of big guys who impact the game. You'd be like, well, are they just an average three-point shooting team? No, they're 12th in the country in three-point percentage. So they can shoot the three. And they're number 1 in free throw percentage. I think that's huge. Excuse me. But, yeah, again, I think that's one of the key metrics that I look at. Again, I look at, can you shoot the three well? Can you hit free throws? In March, everything is 1-1. And if you are a team that can't capitalize off 1-on-1s, you're leaving empty possessions on the table. And it's hard for me to buy into you in those things. But the fact that they are 12th in three-point percentage, first in free throw percentage, that is excellent. Again, they're third in offensive rebound percentage. Again, they do not let you get second chances. Once you put a shot up, the possession's over. Number 3 in the country. Again, they get their own offensive rebounds. So it's like, again, their biggest harp is their strength of schedule. Their strength of schedule, not great. Overall, like top 100 in the country. They're ranked 101st in strength of schedule. It's not great. I know it is not. But again, I'm looking here. Lost to Gonzaga. They had a few bad losses. They lost to Santa Clara, which is not great. They lost to Boise, which also isn't great. But I just think that St. Mary's is a type of team that throws you off in March, especially for teams who play very fast. In most cases, a lot of SEC basketball where it's quick pace, dynamic guards, getting to the rim, back and forth, back and forth. And St. Mary's is the opposite. They're going to make you wait. They're going to make you guard them in the half court. They're going to make you rebound. And they shoot the three well enough. So I am, and I know this is like a Final Four video. I mean, I am in on St. Mary's as at least a Sweet 16 team, depending on where they're ranked. Obviously, I think they're much scarier of a team if they're a 5 or 6 seed compared to like a 2 or 3. I don't know if they're going to be a 2 or 3. They've already got 4 losses. So they're looking more of like a 4 or 5 seed at this point. But again, St. Mary's, I'm bought in on them. I am. I think they translate to March. So those are my recap. Again, that took me 20 minutes. We're not going to end yet, but those are some of the teams I want to talk about. Let me know if there are any teams that you feel like I should talk about next as some of these games go on. I'm going to try to diversify, not go with all the top teams, but the goal is before March Madness that I get to almost every team within that top 40 of KenPom that are going to be the higher ranked teams in the tournament. So let me know what you guys think. When we come back, we're going to transition to Maryland women's basketball and them being the bright spot. The bright spot, again, of Maryland basketball as a whole right now. So stay tuned for that. I will see you guys in a second. Okay, welcome back. Let me just make sure. All right, so we're going to talk some Maryland women's basketball. Again, I apologize for not talking Maryland women's basketball more this season, considering I've talked a lot about the men, and not all of it's been great. Maryland's looked better recently on the men's side, but again, the women have been a bright spot. Again, they were ranked in the top 25 at the beginning of the season. I believe they were even ranked in the top 10. Right now, they're ranked 14th in the country. They're doing very well. Again, with the steady veteran presence of Saylor being there as a leader. I'm a big fan of Addie Mack's game as a freshman coming in and doing what she's doing. Obviously, losing Kayleen hurts, but I think they're in a good spot as of right now. Like when I look at their schedule, yes, they do have some bad losses. I think that the UCLA loss obviously was not great. You don't love the Oregon loss at all. Again, like they had that rough stretch in January where they lost 4 games in a row, and at that point, it could have been easy to, I guess, kind of give up on them. They were 5-6 in the Big Ten at that point, but they have worked around it. Like they have absolutely worked around it to this point, to where now they're 11-6 in the conference, 23-6 overall. I think this bodes well for them this year. Again, the consistency on a day-to-day basis in terms of offense and defense is something I'm looking out for Maryland. I mean, I think last year, obviously, Cheyenne had dealt with a lot of injuries, but that was, again, a lot of big thing. Like when she's not going, and she's not really getting it going, where else is Maryland going to generate this offense? But again, I think that Minnesota game told me a lot about Maryland, and that was very early in the season. Let me check the date of that Minnesota game. I don't know why. I believe this Minnesota game was December 7th. Okay, December 7th. I think that game, again, like I said, I don't love really giving too much credit or I guess too much blame for losses that are before conference play. But in the case of Minnesota, again, their conference play started at the beginning of December. And That game showed a type of resiliency and a type of grit in Brenda Free's teams that we often see. But in this case, especially with I think, a more talented Maryland team, when you combine that with the grit there, I mean, I think they are looking at, again, deep success, especially in that Big Ten tournament, and then going into the NCAA tournament. So I won't say I've been sitting here watching every single Maryland women's game, more so like I did definitely last year. But again, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I'm liking the momentum of how this team is going right now, and I think they've got a groove about them. And again, March Madness is all about catching fire at the right time. Catch fire in February. Don't catch fire in December. And Maryland's doing just that, especially on the women's side. So I'm liking everything I'm seeing as of right now for Maryland women's basketball. So shout out to them. They've got a pretty big game coming up against Michigan on the 28th on Saturday. So good luck to them there. We'll be rooting for them. Again, thank you guys for listening to X's on the Board. I really appreciate it. This was, again, a lot shorter topics. Again, I still went 25 minutes. I really wanted to break down a lot of some of these top teams. We're going to be doing this for every team pretty much within the top half of the country. Gonna try to hit some more Big Ten teams as well. I mean, I know I hit 3 here, but I mainly want to get most of the Big Ten. So thank you guys for listening to X on the Board, live from College Park. Again, should be live next Thursday. Expect some clips of this episode to be going up. If you guys are new, you guys follow me on Twitter. XKB Media is where I'll be tweeting a lot about the games. They're on Instagram at X's on the Board. Thank